Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm joined by Bo Talks Games. Bo, how are you doing today?
I'm good, how about you? Got some coffee?
I'm good.
It's good morning?
It is a good morning. Well, technically it's noon, but you know, close enough.
Well, for us it's morning.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's our morning. We just woke up.
So, this video might just be like, kind of like a weird concept, because I know some people will be like, what the heck are you talking about? Wii U sucks, the Switch is so much better, and you're not wrong. But here's the thing. The Wii U failed so horribly that it pretty much just was a launching pad for the Switch. Like, it pretty much just set up the Switch for success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, basically, that's what we're here to talk about. And I'm pretty sure it's, like, obvious for most people, like, the reasons. But let's just go over them anyway. So, obviously, the biggest one is the games. Because Nintendo just had, like, this whole generation, of course, being 4 years, where they were just making these HD games that nobody bought. So essentially, they had a whole library of games that they could pull from that were already done. Now, granted, they did have to port them and stuff, but these are some great games that basically nobody played, and as it turns out, this was a brilliant idea to port them to Switch instead of just making new versions, because, I mean, look at their best-selling games on here. Like Mario Kart 8, New Super Mario Bros. U, Breath of the Wild, which, of course, launched on both at the same time, but, you know what I mean? It was developed for the Wii U, and they spent that time, you know, developing the game, so, yeah. What do you think about these games?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, the Wii U failed for many reasons, and the cadence at which games were released is certainly a part of that. But when you are removed from the droughts of the Wii U, when you're not living it day to day, and you just look at the lineup of Wii U games, there are a lot of great games on Wii U. So for them to just go into the Switch, coming off of the Wii U, which completely bombed, to have all of these great games, I mean, a lot of these are critically acclaimed, Bayonetta 2, Mario Kart 8, Tropical Freeze, Captain Toad, like, these are loved games, just only played by the hardcore Nintendo fans at the time. To kind of just have in this baked-in, like, just lineup of games, I think is actually a part of the reason that the Switch has lasted so much longer also, because, I mean, just this list of games right here, I mean, that's a year and a half worth of releases or so, I would say. So it really kind of just set them up for having consistent Switch games really the entire time. I mean, imagine 2020 without, well, this is a Wii game, but Xenoblade or Pikmin 3. Like, the Wii U ports definitely saved some of these years.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, like, a lot of these games obviously, like, have better versions on the Switch. And, like, for example, 3D World by itself was, like, the Wii U's big 3D Mario. But it's not, like, an Odyssey level game. So I think this is actually pretty much, like, a perfect release to have on Switch as a supplemental title. Obviously, there was, like, Mario Kart 8, which is, like, a huge, like, tentpole game that they released. But other than that, most of these games are, like, good supplemental titles for the most part. I mean, obviously, I think they're really good games. Like, I think New Super Mario Bros. U was probably, like, the best 2D Mario at the time. But it's still, like, a good release to have. And even, like, games like Splatoon, like, they didn't port that game, but Splatoon 2 and even Mario Maker 2, those games stood on the framework of the Wii U versions. So it pretty much... Yeah. And because of those releases, specifically the ones that had, like, online elements, they were able to figure out the infrastructure sort of in an experimental way on Wii U, so that when the Switch versions came out, they pretty much knew exactly how to manage it.
Yeah, I think the game that probably benefited most in terms of not being a port but having a direct sequel early on is Smash Bros. Because Smash Wii U took, what, 4 years for them to make? It was announced to be in development, I think, in like 2011, 2012.
Yeah, because they finished it right after Kid Icarus Uprising, right?
Yeah, so, yeah, it would have started in 2012 then. So I guess it was in development for like 2 or 3 years, but then it had all the DLC support through 2016. Having that as a base, especially for Ultimate, and I mean, they got Ultimate out within 18 months of the Switch's release, or like maybe 20 months, something like that. That one really was a huge benefit to Sakurai's team, but also just the Switch lineup. And once again, talking about 2018, a year that's mostly Wii U ports, you look at the big new games that year, it's like, okay, Mario Tennis Aces, Torna came out that year, Kirby Star Allies, but then Smash Ultimate, which, yeah, it's not a port, but like, It kind of is, with just a bunch of new content, and obviously World of Light. So, yeah, having a lot of the foundation for sequels that came out on Switch pretty early, you mentioned Splatoon 2 and Mario Maker, definitely set them up for success early on. But even now, I mean, we're still seeing the effects of it with Xenoblade X. I mentioned how bad 2020 would have been without Pikmin 3 Deluxe, but, like, imagine this year right now without Xenoblade X coming out.
Yeah, they would just have nothing. I mean, just
they would
Donkey
actually
Kong.
have no games. They would actually have no games, yeah. So, the Wii U library, I still don't think they're done. We've talked a lot about Color Splash. I've been on a big Woolly World hype train recently where I really think that game's coming. Those are the two left that make the most sense, barring the Zelda HD ports. But even though we already have, I don't know how many are on this list, like what, 12, 15?
Yeah, something
we
like
still
that.
We still have a handful that they can still use either as late Switch 1 games to keep supporting it after the Switch 2 comes out, or even just as Switch 2 games if they want to.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think they waited so long for Xenoblade X, is just because they sort of front-loaded these games toward the beginning of the Switch's life, and then there was like a huge gap after, I think, Tokyo Mirage Sessions was like the last one they did before they stopped, and then Xenoblade X came out, or is coming out this year. And the thing is, obviously, and I mentioned this, like Mario Kart 8, they didn't make a new Mario Kart game, unless you count like Mario Kart Live, which, I mean, I don't. But obviously, these games, to some extent, like replaced a Switch version, at least in the case of Mario Kart, and like Pokken Tournament, like there wasn't like a new Pokken Tournament game or something like that. But
yeah, it's a little different. I don't know if we were gonna get one anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, like, because they released Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on Switch, they were able to have their teams freed up to make ARMS, to make different games. So the Switch's library, not only did they have more games for it, but also had more variety of games. Because ARMS is something that would have never existed had it not been for them just porting the Wii U game of Mario Kart instead of just making like a new one.
Yeah. It also allowed, in the case of Mario Kart specifically, like, the booster course pass is mostly old tracks from Tour and 3D and Mario Kart 7, but like that is content-wise basically a new Mario Kart. Mario Kart 8 is just such a solid foundation. There's no point in reinventing the wheel back then, and this is another thing where we might see even more of the effects of this with Switch 2, because you're not telling me that Mario Kart team has been making a Mario Kart game for 7 years. You're not telling me that. Maybe they canceled a game, but I think it is not unlikely that they have something else pretty early on for Switch 2 on top of Mario Kart 9.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I don't know if it's going to be like ARMS 2 or something, but like...
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
mean, that'd be nice. But yeah, it's still... It is basically unprecedented for Nintendo to have like reused so many games, but at the same time, you got to understand, like 90 or like 80 or like 90% of the people who bought these games had not played them before. They were essentially new games, so it's not like it was a negative impact on Nintendo. Not even like in a sort of marketing sort of way where it's like, oh, these are old games. It's like, no. And like obviously like games like New Super Mario Bros. U, that has U in the title, but. And I'm sure, like...
20 million copies.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like, people who, like, knew about the Wii U version, they're like, oh, yeah, it's just a port of the Wii U game. But do you think, like, an 8-year-old is going to look at the game and be like, why does it have a U at the end? They're just going to say, oh, it's just called that. It's just called U.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to think about it, for the most part. And this applies to, like, most of these games. Like, Pikmin 3, do you really think a lot of people knew about Pikmin 3? Probably not.
Yeah, no. Yeah, New Super Mario Bros. U was the one that I think got the most scrutiny put on it. But... And I know people are tired of it, of New Soup, but, like, it's a good game. It's a family game. It was obviously going to do really well. I didn't think it would do as well as it has done.
Oh, absolutely not.
but it was clearly a wise choice, and, I mean, Nintendo got to double dip, because 2019, I think, is a pretty great year of Switch.
Yeah, I think
the first half of it a
everyone
little bit slower. Because you just had New Soup, and then I think Dragon Quest Builders they published, and then Yoshi's Crafted World. But then the second half is a banger. The first half would have just not had New Soup U. Like, I don't think there wouldn't have been another game in that time frame. So they basically just got 20 million free sales for doing nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they were just they released New Super Mario Bros. U, and then they just like sat on their hands and be like, I guess we don't have to develop a game. They just start like relaxing in like a chair. No, that's not what happened.
Yeah,
they were making other games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But without New Soup U there, it would have been empty. So it just goes to show like how much the Wii U, the lack of attention the Wii U got propelled the Switch forward, especially in terms of its game library. And I still think Nintendo's figuring this out. And actually, I mean, this goes beyond Wii U. These Wii U ports, I think, showed Nintendo, like really showed them, people will buy old games. Because you talked about how at a certain point they kind of stopped doing the Wii U ports, like 2021 or so. That's when they started doing 3DS and Wii a lot. And a lot of GameCube stuff.
Yeah.
Nintendo didn't really used to remake games that often. There used to be a lot of ports to handhelds. But in terms of like their new powerful console, it was rare to see like a Wii game going to Wii U or a GameCube game going to Wii. I guess that's maybe a bad example, but that was more just because of the control method with the new Play Control games. The Switch and the Wii U ports taught them that they can remaster Thousand Year Door, and it'll sell well, you know?
Yeah, that would have absolutely not happened. To all you Thousand Year Door fans, that would have never happened if they didn't like port Mario Kart 8 to the Switch.
Yeah, and then they realize, like, wait a minute. But it's also so smart because we're seeing other parts of the industry just in turmoil, figuring out game budgets and development timelines, and Nintendo's over here just like, they've mastered it, man. They've mastered the strategy of just having old games fill up the lineup. Because Nintendo games are, like, they're all timeless classics. Everybody loves all of their games, at least going back to GameCube. Maybe N64 gets a little bit muddier, and then beyond that, we're talking SNES games, but Thousand Year Door, even though I don't really like it that much, it stands as its own, as like a new game. It is of a similar quality, if not a much higher quality than Origami King. So, and especially in that case, people didn't play it on GameCube either, really. It didn't sell that well.
Yeah.
So it's basically just a new game, but they didn't have to make a new game. They just had to make it look pretty.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff, it just takes less effort as well. Because, the story is already written, the script is done. The whole layout of the game is done. You have all the ideas, concepts, gameplay mechanics, everything's done. Of course, you have to, like, remake it, but it's not like you have to start from scratch. Like, you have the base there that you can just work off of. You're basically just enhancing the game that already exists. Obviously, it's different for a remaster and a remake, but we're not going to get into that. That's, like, a whole other discussion. But, especially for, like, Wii U games, people didn't, like, know about it because, nobody bought a damn Wii U, but even older games like Thousand Year Door, it's just so old that like nobody remembers it, like except for like us, like the people listening to this type of discussion are the ones that would have known about it, but most people are not gonna like know about a game that's that old.
Well, especially when you consider like I think the demographics, like the Nintendo's shown that most of their player base is in like their mid-20s to 30s, but there's always new Nintendo fans being born. There's a lot of people who weren't even alive when the Wii U came out playing Switch games. That's crazy for me to say, but it is true. So there's really no reason, there's no good reason to not be constantly reusing your old games in your lineup.
Yeah. And of course, the biggest beneficiary, aside from Mario Kart 8, would be Breath of the Wild. Now, obviously this was a launch title and launched on both Wii U and Switch at the same time, so it's a little bit different. But this whole time, they were developing the game because of the Wii U. So Breath of the Wild had not been ready if it weren't for the Wii U, and the Switch wouldn't have such a massive launch. And Zelda wouldn't have been propelled forward, because prior to Breath of the Wild, the best-selling Zelda game was Twilight Princess, which I think sold like 8 million across all platforms, or something like that. Breath of the Wild sold 32 million as of now, at least, or maybe it's like 33 or something now. But either way, it's 4 times bigger than the previous best-selling, and people already were saying Zelda was like one of the most famous game franchises at that point. So the ability of Nintendo to market their games and release these big budget games to a new demographic, especially like younger kids and stuff, really is gonna help them, especially in the future, even like after Switch 2, I think, because a lot of kids and a lot of people just in general, Breath of the Wild was like their first Zelda game. So this is just, not only is it a good release to have, just because it was pretty much just ready for the Switch, which I think, by the way, they delayed the game for the Switch. But it also just helps establish like a new fan base, sort of like what you were saying about how there's new kids being born like every year. So it kind of helps with that. Another thing that people sort of glaze over is the marketing for the Wii U was just so bad that, and people sort of mentioned this, how they thought the Wii U was just like an add-on to the Wii. But like a lot of people don't even know the Wii U exists at all. Like sometimes you'll say, "Oh, I played this game on Wii U," and someone will just say, "Oh, I have a Wii." Like it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, for the like casual person, the only thing that Nintendo had at the time was the DS, but it was actually a 3DS. They still just called it a DS. And really, that was only there because of Pokemon. Pokemon carried that console. And yeah, I mean, to be fair, the 3DS sold 70 million units. I'm not saying the other games didn't matter, but Pokemon definitely saved that console. It was when the 2DS and Pokemon X and Y came out that that console really blew up. Outside of that, there wasn't really talk of Nintendo at all. Like, it was not like it was not in the consumer zeitgeist at all. So, going from the Wii, which before the Wii U and 3DS even came out, the Wii was already dead. We're talking like 2010 Nintendo.
Yeah, like after Galaxy 2 released, it was pretty much just done.
Yeah. That was the last time they were relevant, up to late 2016 when Reggie went on Jimmy Fallon, right? Like, yeah. They had like a big 6-7 year gap. So when the Switch came out, it was seen as this grand return. It was seen as, oh, Nintendo's coming back with a Zelda Skyrim game. That's something people have been saying for years they should do. So while in those couple of years with the Wii U, maybe it was a little rough, ultimately, it didn't hurt them that much. I think they had 1 year of profit loss, which isn't even that, like, that's not that big of a deal. I'm sure they have a freaking insane bank vault, you know? They could afford that 1 or 2 years of profit loss because it meant that the Switch was just, it was just more exciting when it came out. There was no Nintendo oversaturation. People were ready for Nintendo again.
Yeah, it's just completely, just the lack of anything really relevant in terms of Nintendo. And at this point in 2017, like late 2016, I think a lot of people were starting to get over the fact that games were kind of getting boring in a way, because there was like, obviously this sort of happened before as well, but people were like, they were getting bored of like games that were like Call of Duty or, you know, Halo or whatever, and that's sort of the point when people started dropping off. But of course, around that time is when people started coming back to games because they started getting more interesting. Like later on in like the PS4's life, especially, and when the Switch launched, it was like a perfect timing as well.
Yeah, I think so people didn't buy the Wii U for a multitude of reasons, but one of them being like, it was still like a kid's console. I think a lot of gamers felt that way because they wanted to play the cutting edge. They wanted to play your Call of Duties, your Battlefields, all respect to Battlefield and Call of Duty. But by 2017, that was definitely around the time that not just Nintendo, but also just Japanese games really came up on the rise. Nier Automata, Persona 5, Yakuza 0, those all came out that year. And those games sold 5 to 10 million copies each, unheard of numbers for Japanese games. I feel like that, in conjunction with the Switch launch, even though they were on different platforms, like, people just started opening up more to fun games, instead of just cutting edge games. But there was definitely a period for the first half of PS4 and Xbox One where people, like, yeah, there's fun stuff in there, but it wasn't, like, Gravity Rush bombed, Tearaway Unfolded, like, these games that didn't do that well. It wasn't until around 2017 that I feel like a lot of people were like, oh, games could just be fun, you know? And even talking about indie games, that's around the time that I feel like indie games started, like, really, absolutely. Like, we're talking 20, 30 million copies. Before, yeah, there were big ones, Super Meat Boy, Binding of Isaac, but 2017, I think that's when, like, Undertale and Stardew Valley, like, 2017 is, like, a renaissance year of people just realizing, wait a minute, games can be fun.
Yeah. And the Switch's marketing as well helped with that for sure. Like, the first teaser for the Switch that we got in, like, October of 2016, Nintendo completely ditched the whole kiddie aspect of the console, and they actually just showed like young adults playing the Switch. And of course it's like Nintendo games, and they just showed like Nintendo games, but the first game they showed was Breath of the Wild, and basically said Nintendo games aren't just for kids. And I don't even think there was a single kid in that teaser.
In that trailer, no, it wasn't until the Super Bowl they showed some kids playing ARMS.
Yeah. So they completely changed their entire marketing strategy, and like you were saying, like more fun games coming out, and this might, I don't know if this was because of Nintendo's like new marketing thing, which by the way, the Super Bowl ad, genius. I don't think they'd ever done that before, at least not for like a while.
Certainly not during the Wii U.
Oh, absolutely not. Which is kind of ironic because that's probably when they needed it the most. But
well, it's like with the marketing with Wii U and even 3DS, any game that they released in 2017, if it had released in like 2014, they would have marketed it to like 10-year-olds. Like the trailer, we've all seen the Wii U commercials.
Yeah.
The should you buy a Wii U like whiteboard talking to their parents. Think about ARMS. ARMS is a game that is, we already mentioned it twice actually. It's a game that's often overlooked, I feel like, at this point. It sold 3 million copies. It's one of the best-selling fighting games of all time. 2014 Nintendo would have destroyed that game with the marketing. But they didn't market it necessarily for kids. It's like they became less ashamed of their games and like, yeah, adults play our games. That's fine.
Yeah, I think in the...
But before, they would have just really focused on kids.
Yeah, I think in like the ARMS like segment, it was literally like a kid playing with like his dad. So it's not like... Right. It's like just a kid's thing, and the Wii U marketing was horrible. Like the stupid whiteboard or like the projector. It's like a PowerPoint. It's like, dude, what were you thinking? A PowerPoint? That's so lame. Like, come on. Like the Switch's marketing, not only did it show like a more varied like type of people playing the games, but also it showed them actually like having fun playing the games instead of a damn PowerPoint. And of course, the last big thing about the Switch is the fact that you can take it in the TV or like portably on the go, which of course is a big thing because Nintendo's portable systems have pretty much always been successful. Now, obviously, people like to point out the drop off from DS to 3DS, but the 3DS, 75 million units is nothing to scoff at. But as far as the Wii U is concerned, the main gimmick, of course, was the 2 screens, but also like I think the first thing they actually showed was the fact that you could play it off the TV. And I know when people got the Wii U, they were kind of disappointed that you could not really leave the room. But the Switch kind of fixed that, and that was like the biggest thing people praised about the Wii U. So introducing like an actual mainstream console that could do that, I think was a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When I was a kid, like if my mom wanted to watch football or something, just being able to go off TV with the gamepad was crucial. I love that feature. Even if I'm in the same room, just being able to actually have my own screen and play Wind Waker or whatever was awesome. And especially now in hindsight, the Wii U feels like a prototype. Because they knew what they wanted to do. They were this close. It was not ready yet. And maybe there's a scenario where the Wii U never existed, we got a Wii HD, and I think even without the Wii U, the Switch was still like what they wanted. They wanted to make the Switch because their handheld market was always more successful, but the Wii U definitely showed them that people do want to be able to play their home console games on a portable. So in that regard, it definitely was a stepping stone. It is also worth noting, kind of unrelated, but kind of not, the Wii U being what it was, having off-TV play, leading into the Switch being a portable home console you can take anywhere and dock it at home, and then it being so successful, is the reason Xbox is making a handheld right now, is the reason that PlayStation Portal exists, and is the reason that all of these different Steam Decks and the ROG Ally, like, Nintendo's a trendsetter, man. It's crazy that, like, in 2013, people were saying handheld consoles were dead because of, like, iPhone and stuff, and now they're more popular than ever, which is just kind of crazy that Nintendo, like, even though they've been doing handhelds since the 80s, it's just now that they're, like, reaching their peak performance, you know? Yeah,
it's also, like, obviously, like, mobile phones, the games are completely different than, like, an actual dedicated handheld. But, yeah, it just goes...
Not anymore.
Well, they used to be at that time, but...
At that time, yeah. But Resident Evil 4 is on there now, remake.
But...
Death Stranding's on iPhone.
Yeah, it just goes to show, like, how important it kind of is to have a handheld console. And the Switch was just, like, it came at the perfect time, really. The 3DS was slowing down. I think, well, at that time it was still successful, but like it was
slowing down.
Yeah, it was slowing down. Obviously, they still kept supporting it for a little while, but by 2019 it was completely dead. And the Switch, it was just a great concept, man. And the fact that it was just like so versatile as well. Probably the most versatile console ever released. And obviously, like I said, the Wii U's gimmick is technically different, but and like you said, they did know what they wanted to do. They were sort of eking in that direction, even since like the GameCube with the damn handle. But
yeah.
But anyway, that's pretty much all I got to say about it. So where can they find you? I'm sure, no, it's pretty obvious, but, you know, might as well say it anyway.
Yeah, I cover Nintendo news at Botox Games, and also I have a second channel where I cover collecting stuff and reviews as well as other random, like, nostalgia-type topics over at It's Amiibo. So check out my other YouTube channels.
Yep. Go ahead and check them out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you have any other ideas, or do you think the Wii U is complete, like, dog water and should not have been ever released, even barring what we just said? But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later. Peace.
Peace!